Welcome to the Dynasty Roundtable podcast. Tonight, we have a special guest, a special topic that we don't typically cover, but when you're bringing in an expert, Matt Babich, you have to shift things a little bit, and boy, do we have an expert, don't we, tonight?
Absolutely. Today, we have Bradley Stalder of Best Bell Fantasy and right here at playerprofiler.com. He is a Best Bell savant, and today he is going to walk us through the, to me at least, murky waters of Dynasty Best Ball. So Bradley, first off, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great. Second pod on the Player Profiler Network just today. So I'm stoked to bring you double trouble from the Best Ball streets. Yeah. And reprising my role from this new podcast, Stack Hunters, that debuted last week, had the second episode last night, and it continues through the rest of the summer, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. So I'm excited, guys. Thanks for the invite.
We got a Packers fan. Are you a Packers fan? I'm seeing Lazard and the Bakhtiari.
I don't know. Can't you tell? You know, the Robert Tonyan jersey and the
I didn't see the
cheese heads. And
I don't know if you see this. I don't know if you see this.
So on top here, we got a little NFC North battle.
Yeah.
Only one man. So I can't believe this. I wish I would have known this ahead of time because I should have planted an Aaron Rodgers question.
Oh yeah,
maybe a Jordan Love question. Something that would
we can talk Rodgers, Love. I'm here for it, Seth. And
we get Christian Watson might be lurking around the corner. See how Bradley feels about Christian Watson. He's a hotly debated player, but I think maybe before we put the cart before the horse here, right? So best ball. I personally am an old school guy. I like to set my lineup. It makes me kind of anxious when I'm in a few best ball leagues and I go to it on Sundays and I remember, oh yeah, I don't have to set a lineup, but is it gonna work right? I'm kind of one of those sickos. But it's best ball's growing and it's a great format and it's still early on. So Bradley, walk the good people through like the key differences between best ball and a regular format in Dynasty.
Sure. And just best ball is you don't have to set your lineup. That's what Seth already alluded to. So the computer already fills your lineup with the best possible scores for those unfamiliar with how best ball works. So you draft your lineup or your roster, but unlike redraft best ball, Dynasty, you keep your players year to year, and many formats you're allowed to have waivers and trades in these Dynasty streets. So that's a little bit different from redraft best ball. Redraft, like on Underdog Fantasy, our partners here use promo code Underworld for 100% deposit match up to $100 first time deposit. There you go. Or our friends over at FFPC, make sure you guys are checking that out as well. The code, I believe, is also Underworld, and that gets you $25 off. So all the promos, all the ads are right there for you to try out some redraft best ball. And there's no trading, there's no waivers. You just are stuck with the injuries. So I would say that there are some key differences. Usually in these Dynasty best ball streets, you are allowed waiver pickups. You are allowed to trade with your league mates because it is a closed league. And so we'll talk about the differences like between redraft and Dynasty best ball in a little bit in more depth. But ultimately, that transactional freedom will change your strategy and how you view players and positions as we continue this discussion.
Yeah, definitely. So when we look at Dynasty, we have these age-related production curves that we always talk about. And we have heavy focuses on age apexes and primes. And when you think about Dynasty best ball, are those age-related production curves similar? Are we typically fading ages and buying ages like we typically do in Dynasty, or does the best ball format change that up a little bit?
I think you can hold on to veterans just a little bit longer in your dynasty leagues because you can pick up off of waivers and because you can make all these transactions. The age cliff does happen, but we also know that it happens for different players and different play styles in different ways. So for instance, like the Mike Williams of the world, the big bodied wide receivers tend to hit that age cliff a little bit sooner and a little bit harder. Whereas like the DeAndre Hopkins or the Steph Diggs types, they might last a little bit longer. And if those players who have high levels of production, your consistent top 5, top 10, top 20 wide receiver weekly finishes, then those are players that will continue to offer some upside even later on in their careers that maybe you just don't want to move away from, especially because with rookies in best ball, those rookies typically aren't going to be hitting very often in the first half of your season. So you're kind of punting half of a season, but not the full season, like usually in a redraft or in a regular non-best ball dynasty league. You're probably not going to get meaningful production until the end, and then by that time it's too late. So it's tough for you to navigate that a little bit more, as we're talking about like how are you valuing the end of that, like the big time wide receivers, like the Tyreek Hills of the world. Like, you're not going to want to move off of Tyreek Hill right now in the dynasty best ball because he still offers elite top 5 production. Like that would be kind of silly to trade him for, I don't know. I was able to get him for like a wide receiver 2 and maybe like a future first in your regular dynasty leagues. But the game changing weekly upside that those types of players offer even into their age 29, age 30 seasons, you're not going to want to move off of them. So that's, I think, a little bit of a difference between how dynasty best ball and your regular dynasty leagues should be viewing wide receivers.
Okay. Well, do you think there's any difference between the value of rookie picks in best ball versus regular? Do you see any difference there, or is that about the same?
Yeah, I think that you're usually depending upon your rookie quarterbacks. If you're drafting, like let's say you're drafting a CJ Stroud right away, it's probably because you were a top couple picks in your super flex leagues, right? But he's not going to be offering you a lot of upside. Whereas trading for a veteran, trading one of those upper tier picks is going to be giving you week to week upside. You're going to have to be waiting a while for those quarterbacks to develop. And if you want to be competitive in your league, like, unfortunately, the Superflex Dynasty best ball is not going to be hitting as high for those rookie quarterbacks. So if you can pivot off of those right away, that would be something to consider if you want to stay competitive or be competitive right away. It may be frustrating for you because the best ball side is kind of tantalizing. Like you're going to want to be and feel competitive, but unfortunately, like those upper tier rookie picks may not be hitting when you want them to in year one.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you because Matt and I have talked about exactly what you're saying. CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, and we even are a little worried about their value. I mean, what is really going to have to happen for you to get excited about where their value is going to be at next year? Because like, are they going to have to finish in the top 10 of fantasy points per game in Dynasty? You know what I mean? For that value to go up, because right now they're being drafted. I'm seeing 3rd round and a startup 4th round. And at that price, it's, you know, I'm typically going veteran, like you're saying, like a veteran guy that's going to help me win now. Or if I'm going the rebuilding route, like I'm drafting TJ Hawkinson players, especially in multiple tight end, like you're starting multiple tight ends or it's a tight end premium, players like that I'm valuing over those rookie quarterbacks for sure. So yeah,
I would also have to say about rookie tight ends, like that pushes them even further down because like you're hoping that a Dalton Kincaid or you're hoping that a Michael Mayer can be a contributor for you in year 1 and year 2, like if you're drafting them in the dynasty streets. But unfortunately, like we don't see those types of tight ends hit elite ceilings for years.
Yeah.
And In fact, year to year, I was just talking yesterday on the Stack Hunters podcast with the Stat Masters, and we brought up best ball points added, which is a weekly stat, best ball points added per game. And tight ends had a 0.78 correlation year to year, best ball points added per game. And that's extremely strong correlation, especially when like we're in the streets. We know what how weak correlations are. And for it to be that strong year to year, like a good player stays good and a bad player stays bad. And so it's hard for us to see, those players like the rookie tight ends really hitting right away and being immediate contributors. So if you've got a back end first round pick in your dynasty best ball, trade it away and get some veteran help for players who, you might feel like they're icky, or maybe they're on the downturn. They only have 2 years left, or they've got one solid year left of maybe post apex, but not dust. Sure, use them. Like that's worth it because you're still milking out value, and maybe you can get like, I don't know, another third round pick and there's some value to be had. So consider ways to pivot out of there's obvious tier gaps this year when we're talking about rookie draft picks. Like you're feeling like you're going to have to wait a year or two for Zay Flowers. You're going to have to wait, for your Rashee Rices or your Mims, your Marvin Mims, those types of players who are going in the back end of the first round or even the second round. You're going to have to wait a while, and it's going to be frustrating for you because they're stuck behind consistent producers. So unfortunately, like the value of rookie picks in best ball, unless they're first round pedigree type of players, like I'm drafting a decent amount of Quentin Johnson or Jordan Addison, like let the redraft best ball market speak to you about how you should value those types of players for the immediate 2023 season.
Yeah, it's funny how this can change like class to class too, because if we would have talked about this same topic a year ago, it would have been interesting to hear your point of view coming off of a class of Wilson, Olave, London, Dotson, where we had all those first round quality talents, like you mentioned, that we didn't really think we were going to have to wait too long for any of them to hit. So I think it more speaks to how strong that class was, but great stuff there. So another very popular thing in best ball and even redraft and dynasty these days is stacking, getting that positive correlation in your lineup. So in dynasty best ball, is there any added value in getting an elite stack like a Burrow Chase and just kind of establishing your dominance for the next 5 to 7 years? Is that something in dynasty best ball you're willing to just push all the chips in for?
So I would say that stacking it's both overrated and underrated. And just hold with me for a second. It's overrated in the sense that you are in just usually a 12-team league, right? And so many of those 12-team leagues did I get my player takes right? Like all you needed was, for instance, Justin Fields for 2 weeks to score 40 points each, and you've got the one player that it took to set yourself apart from the rest of the league. So it didn't require a stack. And so the small leagues don't require that stacking, especially in like season long or like cumulative point best ball leagues where it's not necessarily head to head or it's from week 1 to week 17. Just depends on how the format of the league is set up. But it could be overrated in that sense where you just need to get your player takes right and you just need the players who are showing elite ceilings over and over again over the course of years. But if you are in a tournament setting and you know that you are a good team and you're going to be in the playoffs, having an elite stack can separate you because you have then your Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Or maybe this year it could possibly be Justin Fields and DJ Moore, right? And so that stack might be the difference of you getting just one, not player take right, but one game environment right during that playoff week. And that's going to put you over the edge. So it depends on how your league is set up, but if you are in a tournament setting for even your league, a really good stack can separate you in the right environment. But if it's season long, if it's cumulative points, it's more on, did I get these player takes right? Did I draft the right players? Did I trade for the right players? Did I pick the right ones up off of waivers? And so I think that there is a nuance different there, but stacking can be important, but it depends on your league settings.
Yeah, because some people definitely treat stacking as, oh my God, I have to go get my stack. So I think that's a good a distinction to make there. Who are some of if you had to give Dynasty players some advice, and you could even speak to, I mean, we'll talk more about it later too, but you could even talk to some of the drafts you're doing right now, because it might be the same conversation. But what are some affordable stacks or some like cheat code stacks that you think people could get in Dynasty? Because obviously it would be great to have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, but it's really hard to do. So what are some affordable ones that you think people could go get right now that would really help them out?
I think a Jameson Williams, Jared Goff is going to be cheap enough for you. There is more clarity, I think. I think it would have been even cheaper 6 months ago before extension talks started happening with Jared Goff. Like, I don't know if that's official that they've started extension talks, but the fact that Goff was one of the, I think he had the 6th or 7th highest completion percentage, deep ball completion percentage last year. Jameson Williams fits that profile. Like, Jameson Williams is Will Fuller incarnate. Like, he's the reincarnation. Will Fuller had to leave the league so that Jameson Williams could also be suspended. But it fits that this former first-round pick in a dome, elite speed, downfield threat, big playability. Like, we're talking best ball here. This is a dynamic player. He was one of only 2 players in 2021 who had above a 60% catch rate and 20 yards per reception in college. The other one, Marvin Mims. So there you go. There's a little bit of fun if you want. So another cheap one, I mean, that ties in really cheap, Marvin Mims and Russell Wilson. If you're looking for a rookie this year, another one that comes to mind, and it's going to be a little more expensive, but Justin Fields and DJ Moore, I mentioned that already. I think DJ Moore has been steamed up a bit, but he's fallen in the redraft streets recently. He's going now in the 4-5 turn. Heck, some people, Adam Krautwer's friend of the Stack Hunters and also podcast partner here with the Deep End, he drafted DJ Moore in the 6th round of one of his drafts just last week. So there are values to be had in Chicago. I understand the concerns with the pass volume and all that, but this is an elite target earner with a player who has improved, Justin Fields, who's improved as a passer. So I think that those are a couple best ball stacks that you can consider.
I'm trying to, I love where you went with Jared Goff at first as the cheap quarterback. Because when I think of affordable stack and what happened when I put down my show sheet notes is you generally lean towards get it like the affordable quarterback, these value plays, because Goff had the spike weeks and he was QB 14 in fantasy points per game and feels slightly disrespected in his value right now at QB 17 on regular underdog and pretty much QB 17 in Dynasty as well. One that I tend to gravitate towards and have been all offseason is Daniel Jones, because you get the Konami rushing upside. He was a top 10 quarterback, and I didn't look at his best ball points added per game, but as I pull up the page, I'm sure it was probably friendly. Oh, it's not featured on the quarterback page. That's disappointing. Anyway, Daniel Jones has the rushing floor. He has a new weapon in Darren Waller, who, as an old tight end in the middle tier, is probably not super expensive in Dynasty right now. Then you also have guys like Isaiah Hodgins, who proved to be separators and red zone target earners that can have those spike weeks. And so I like pairing Daniel Jones with some of those cheap options. And then I'm also into Kenny Pickett.
Jalen Hyatt. Let's go.
Jalen Hyatt, Cody Carpentier called him a one-trick pony, but hey, if he's good at that one trick, getting open deep downfield, those spike weeks are going to come. Yeah, that's best ball. And Hyatt is free right now. He is free 99, so you could pick him up anywhere. Seth, what about you?
I like the Daniel Jones because you can kind of pick whichever Giants receiver you believe in, whether that's Paris Campbell, Jalen Hyatt, like you guys were talking about. Isaiah Hodgins is my guy. I like Isaiah.
Wandale had a 20% target share last season.
Yeah, Wandale.
He's free.
Yeah, exactly. Like all these late options you have, and then to speak to the correlation in Week 17 of some of these best ball tournaments, that Rams offense too. I mean, the Rams defense is not looking like it's going to be a good defense, so that could be a shootout that some people don't really see coming in Week 17. So anyway, I do like that. I mean, Bradley basically said a bunch of them I had written down, but Bradley, what do you think about I don't mind it so much in best ball. I don't like it so much in a league where you have to set your lineup, but I was thinking if you like the Packers, because I think the NFC North, I don't think the Lions defense is going to be very good. The Bears defense was one of the worst in the NFL last year, and they didn't add any pass rushers really. But so if you could get Jordan Love and then stack them with whatever receiver you like, if you like Christian Watson, cool. Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, I think those are fine stacks too. And of course, I have Goff and Fields written down. I think Fields and DJ Moore is, for some reason, DJ Moore, I think, is going under the radar because of the pass volume concerns. But if you hit on that one because of the upside ability of Fields, that I think he could be the quarterback one in all of fantasy. He has that kind of upside to do that. You know,
I think he can be the quarterback one even if DJ Moore doesn't return the ADP investment that you want. I mean, Fields was quarterback 5 last year without DJ Moore, and with Darnell Mooney playing half the season and Fields being stifled in the pass volume, there's a very easy pathway for Justin Fields to be the quarterback one overall in 2023.
Yeah. And that's coming from a Packers fan, folks. So, he means it that when he's saying that. So I don't know if the Bears, we'll see. It's going to be a year where the Bears figure out who Justin Fields is for sure, because they gave him all kinds of help. DJ Moore, they drafted the offensive lineman in the first round.
My boy Robert Tonyan.
Robert Tonyan. They've got Robert Tonyan.
Bob Tonyan.
There you go. Yeah. So I love it. Especially at the price tag where you can easily kind of, if you have it, typically around the turn, you can get DJ Moore. I think in if you have the 4 or 5 turn there, you can get them that stack pretty easily. I've been able to, but I suppose this is Dynasty though. But all those stacks and more, I like quite a bit, and I don't think it's going to cost you a lot. Also, if you want to take a chance on a rookie, Kirk Cousins and Jordan Addison might be a nice one too. Well, there's going to be all kinds of passing volume in that offense. So
at least for this year, I don't know what Minnesota's quarterback is going to be for 2024. Maybe they extend the Cousins for another year. Maybe they move on. But whatever the case may be, I do like Addison's profile. So we can target Addison for sure.
Yeah, and that's the whole Justin Jefferson versus Joe Burrow as the wide receiver one in Dynasty. It's like, what are they going to do with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota? And that you've got the quarterback in place in Cincinnati. So that's where player profile. I think it's a pretty solid argument is what you bring up there for sure, because there is some quarterback uncertainty in Minnesota past this year. But this year it's going to be, we know what we're getting, but past that it's really uncertain. So it's a good point.
Kyler Murray in Minnesota.
Ooh, I like it.
I think Kyler stays in Arizona, but wouldn't that be sick?
Yeah,
Kyler Murray and Justin Jefferson.
If they have the number 1 overall pick, they're going to have a decision to make, because they're either going to have to believe in Kyler and trade the pick.
New GM, new coach. It's very the pathway is there for Kyler Murray to move on out of Arizona.
It's hard to deny the most valuable thing in all of football, which is a rookie contract with a elite quarterback talent. That's there's nothing better than that, really. And if they pass that up to believe in Kyler, you've set your window, and you better hit it. So it typically these executives, I wouldn't be shocked if they have the hubris is the word I'll put. The hubris that they think that they can fix it.
Well, I'm sure that the Kyler Murray contract is probably similar in like year to year pricing as Kirk Cousins is right now. I mean, Cousins is getting paid a ton. So is Murray.
And it would be a lot like Minnesota to think that, a change in quarterback is what they need to win a Super Bowl, because it's the fact that they can't stop a nosebleed.
Yeah. Well, we have some more questions for Bradley, but I do want to get to an informative segment from the Podfather. So stick around for more best ball dynasty talk and some of Bradley's tips on some tournaments in Underdog as well. But we're going to give you a message from the FFPC informative segment right now.
Hey, people always ask me, what's the World Series of Fantasy? What's the Super Bowl of Fantasy? And it's easy. It's the FFPC. Their signature Players Championship has a $6 million prize pool, and their best ball leagues start in February. And they're the answer to so many questions. Hey, what's the best place to get a Dynasty Orphan? Well, you can adopt a Dynasty Orphan at the FFPC right now. There's more orphans at the FFPC than anywhere else on the internet. That's why we partner with them. So if you want to play fantasy football for low, medium, high stakes, you love Dynasty, you love best ball, you love seasonal leagues, all types of fantasy footballers need to go to the FFPC. And remember, use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you $25 off your first team. Promo code Underworld, $25 off your first team, no matter what the format is, at the FFPC. Go get it.
Welcome back to the Dynasty Roundtable podcast. First off, go check out the Trade Gods if you haven't already. Matty Kiwoom and Jason Allwine are trade savants of playerprofiler.com. They've been running this show for months, helping you answer all your trade questions. And if you're asking yourself, Matt, I want to get my trade questions answered, but I simply don't know where to go. Well, I have the answer for you too. That's the Player Profiler Discord. It's free to join. You can find the link to the Discord on the Player Profiler website, as well as pretty much any other social media or anything else that we have. We promote it often. It's a great place to hang out. You got me, you got Seth. Bradley, you in there?
I joined just recently.
There we go. So Bradley's in there now. If you didn't want to join for myself or Seth, join for Bradley. We got everyone in there chatting it up, multiple channels. You can insert your trade questions, and the Trade Gods will answer for them live on the Roto Underworld YouTube every Thursday at 7 or 7:30. 7 p.m. Same time slot. I got to look at the YouTube schedule. I have that.
Hey, there we go. You know who's going to be on the show this week, don't you?
No. Why did you tell me, Seth? Oh,
it's me. It's I shanghaied my way onto the show, so you can get me also breaking down some trades on the Trade God. So I'm gonna, and Bradley, we were grading trades. I don't know. I know you're a teacher. Is that correct?
I am.
In your day job. I'm also a teacher. So when they bring me on, we grade the trades. We pull the rubric out, and we really
look. I grade best ball teams sometimes, so
okay.
You'll also use the rubric.
There you go.
We got it happening.
All right. There we go.
All right. So speaking of rubric, speaking of grades, every player gets a grade. That's how we come up with rankings. So when you pulled out your rubric, Bradley, I want to know which of the players in Dynasty Best Ball right now did not pass the test, and you are currently fading in drafts and leagues right now.
Well, one name that comes to mind, and he's been a darling, and I love his profile. I love a lot of the metrics that he puts out, but I'm concerned about him accessing the upside that you want, and that is Rashad Bateman. We love Rashad Bateman as a prospect. He was a first-round pick. He over the last couple of years, but my problem is that the Baltimore Ravens telegraphed to us the lack of confidence in him as a player. And there are concerns that he hasn't been able to stay healthy and NFL ready over the last couple of years. The Ravens paid a lot of money to Odell Beckham. $18 million is not nothing to a 31-year-old wide receiver coming off an ACL tear. They also invested even more first-round draft capital in wide receiver Zay Flowers. And there's Mark Andrews still there. Are all of those players going to feed in a low volume pass offense? Rashad Bateman feels like the odd man out. And I know a lot of people were in on him, but now that we're post free agency and post NFL draft, the Ravens have been telling us this is not our guy. He's not going to be the guy for us this year. And I think that he's a guy that's not passing the test for me for right now. He's going to have to prove himself this year, and there's a lot for him to overcome, for him to pay off for you now. It's difficult. I don't see a clear pathway for Rashad Bateman right now.
I think that hurts Matt Babich's soul a little bit.
I'm sorry, Matt.
It does.
Tell me how I'm wrong. Tell me how I'm wrong, please.
I'll tell you in the range of outcomes where you might be wrong. Because
okay.
I'd be foolish to admit I'd be foolish to not admit that that's a good argument. And in his range of outcomes, it's looking scary. I mean, like you said, franchises communicate what they really want to do behind all the coach speak. And as much as it's gotten me excited that Lamar Jackson has kind of proclaimed Rashad Bateman as the wide receiver one, the franchise did say that they weren't sure if that was the case. Now, we know they needed to bolster the receiving core anyway, and they needed to be able to rock with a 1-2 of Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers or somebody else. So it doesn't completely scare me because they needed to bolster the receiving core anyway. And Odell Beckham, he's one of my fades. So if we check that one off my list, 2 very long breaks without playing football. He's like 31, 32 years old on a low passing offense with multiple knees. He's going to be fighting to be the 3rd overall target or 2nd overall target, depending on how things shake out. And so I think Bateman, with an established connection to Jackson and more room to run around the field, fully healthy, that's the big concern. Is he going to be fully healthy? There's reports that he may not be fully ramped up until October. And, for every week that Zay Flowers is getting more run than Rashad Bateman because of health and developing that connection, the worse things get for Rashad Bateman. So I still believe, but I'm also very cautious with acquiring new shares of Rashad Bateman. And I'll be honest, I haven't been buying in best ball unless I'm pairing him with Lamar Jackson, because in the range of outcomes, I'm not taking the risk in that tier of players unless he's tethered to that talent and getting that edge in a tournament style. So I can't fully disagree with the fade of Rashad Bateman. It doesn't make me happy, but my biggest fade, I'm trying to decide between one of these two. You can go to the Sonic Truth, or you can go to the Mind a Mansion chat from today if you want to see my thoughts on Quentin Johnston and why he's a bust. But Calvin Ridley is being valued way too high right now. The level of certainty that many are exuding that Ridley is going to out-target Christian Kirk this year. I talked about it with Tyler Knably last night on the Mock Draft Live, or on Monday on Mock Draft Live. I'm just not sure. Kirk plays in that fantasy-friendly slot position. He has that connection with Trevor Lawrence, 130 targets last season. And Calvin Ridley, it has been 3 years. It will be 3 years since Calvin Ridley has played a full season. He played 5 games in 2022. Granted, he proved that he was an elite target earner during that span. But I know people want to make the comparison of when A.J. Brown went to the Eagles and when Diggs went to the Bills. But those were 2 talented receivers in their prime who have been ramping up their game season after season. And Calvin Ridley's been spending it working out and running routes on air. And so you can keep your shorts videos, your videos of him in training camp in shorts. When it actually comes to him in a game time decision and Trevor Lawrence says, do I throw it to the boundary and Calvin Ridley or to the post, or do I look for Christian Kirk, who's going to be wide open somewhere over the middle or at the edges of the field, in that pocket of the zone? So I'm gonna go with Christian Kirk at his value all day long. I think he's one of the most undervalued, and I think Calvin Ridley is one of the most overvalued receivers right now.
I think the tricky thing in best ball for me, and maybe Bradley can speak to this, is all the receivers, all the players that I don't like. When it comes to best ball, I'm like, at least I won't have to figure out when to play them. Like I don't like Kadarius Toney, but I like him a little bit better in best ball. Like I don't really ever want to try to figure out when to start Kadarius Toney, or I mean a guy that it might break your heart, Bradley. Christian Watson had an amazing second half of the season, but now he's got a new quarterback. They added a lot of players to the offense, so that's a guy I'm very skeptical on as well. That I'm not, they're just other players going around the same ADP that he's going. I mean, DJ Moore, for example, I would prefer DJ Moore. And then to speak to Calvin Ridley is the other guy on my list, actually, Matt, and I completely agree with a lot of what you said, because he hasn't played football in a year and 5 games, or a year and a half. And he's 28 going on 29 now. And there's other established receivers that have spent time with Trevor Lawrence in the system. Evan Ingram's still there. Zay Jones is still there. So that's a tough one for me too, with all the trying to avoid a cliche here. All those, all that grass to mow or whatever. Like there's a lot of there's a lot of players there. All right. There's a lot of pass catchers. So, and I don't really know what's going on in the chat here.
Are you saying, Seth, are you saying that there's a lot of mouths that need to be fed? Are you saying there's too many mouths to feed in Jacksonville?
Well, I mean, they have 53 players on their team, just like any other. So they have the same amount of mouths to feed as any other team, right? I would assume.
Hey,
but I don't know.
If you're the Arizona Cardinals, you're not really feeding anybody. So
Well, guys, I feel like you brought me on to just like poke my buttons, because because Calvin Ridley is a my guy for this year.
Okay.
And Christian Watson is a my guy for this year.
Me too.
And
Christian Watson. We are together there. But let's hear Calvin Ridley first.
Tell us why we're wrong, Bradley.
So it's a heart and head argument for Calvin Ridley. I'll start with the heart, because we do hear the arguments, and I've heard them for the last however many months, that he hasn't played any football for a long time. And I get it, being off for a while, the rust questions, we saw the rust issues with Deshaun Watson, for instance, last year, for sure. And so I hear that concern and I see it, but I empathize with Calvin Ridley, because if we remember his journey, it was new head coach. They discover a fracture in his foot that the previous regime did not diagnose. He starts playing on it without, he tries gutting it through because Julio Jones is there. And he's like, I need to actually get out and play, even though my foot is fractured. And then his family gets robbed at gunpoint. Thankfully, no one was there, but people broke into his house with guns, and that traumatized him and his family. And that's why he needed to take the mental health break. And so, as someone who is putting myself in the moment of thinking about how I would have reacted in trauma, obviously, I would not have performed my best, and I would not have thought about the right ways in which, the rules of my profession, I would not have known this new rule of betting or whatever on the NFL, or on whatever he did. I would not have, that would have not been on the forefront of my mind when I'm trying to overcome my family first mentality. And so I empathize with that, and then getting a fresh start in Jacksonville. So I'm thinking that moving from that is giving him a new perspective. If you guys want to read more about the heart part of it, you can read the Players Tribune article that he wrote, and it's really moving stuff, and gives you a better perspective of it. So that allows me to, maybe I'm just more forgiving and can give more mercy on the mental side of what he went through as a dad, as someone who, has experienced doing poorly at my job for a bit because I experienced something that really bothered me. And so, but moving past that, like getting a fresh start, getting a new position, getting people who believe in you and traded for you in an organization that has invested some amount. Now he's back and off of suspension and nothing but praise out of Jacksonville. But now let's shift to the profile. You mentioned he's a target earner, and he's going to be the first dog that eats. He's going to be the downfield threat. He's going to be he was the touchdown maker. We were really frustrated with Julio Jones during his couple year overlap that it was Calvin Ridley who was scoring the touchdowns and not Julio. Like, it was almost a running joke that Julio would never score the touchdowns. So he would not only have a median target share of 25% each of the last 2 seasons, but it was also that he was scoring touchdowns and having meaningful high-end fantasy scores. So the profile, we remember he's a first-round pedigree pick. I know he's post-Apex. I get that argument as well, but he still has a couple years left of productivity on what we all can agree on is an ascending Jacksonville offense. So I'm in on Calvin Ridley for this year. What it looks like in the dynasty streets, I get it if you want to trade him away, if he's more of a fade for you, if you don't want him on your roster for holding, like, that's fine. But for this year, he's a my guy. And I'm willing to forgive what might be a little more unforgivable in the fantasy football streets.
That's a really good way to be completely honest. I never put it in that perspective. It's really easy to get caught up in just not playing and getting inserted and doing an offense. But as you were saying that, and first of all, I would highly recommend going to read that Players Tribune piece. I remember reading it at the time. I probably will go back and read it again after this conversation, but it was really incredible stuff and gives you a little insight on some of the things that you think these superstars who are bulletproof kind of go through. And it reminds me of a similar event with Zay Jones, who talked about his issues with mental health and getting a fresh start in Jacksonville. And we just saw what happened with that. And Doug Peterson is a guy who for years has been praised as a culture setter. He's a guy who players want to play for. And, for those of you who have, anyone who works knows when you feel comfortable underneath your boss, the sky is the limit for your performance. When you feel motivated and supported and you feel like you have, like a family where you work. So that's a really good real life perspective on the analysis of it. And so are you a projections guy?
Yeah. So I wanted to get into that. Yeah. So I have all 3 of Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, and Calvin Ridley projected for over 120 targets. So it's not like I'm anti Christian Kirk at all this year. I'm just pro Jaguars offense, like high, high seas, all the boats rise, whatever the phrase is. We believe in the ascension of the Jaguars offense, I think, is the key. Even Evan Ingram, I think he's like not the lone man out, but low man on the totem pole. I still have him projected for 91 targets. It's that Jacksonville really doesn't pass much to the running back, and Trevor Lawrence, even though he had that connection with ETN, like, that's just not how Doug Peterson ran the offense last year. And I don't think they move away from that this year either. So I think a condensed target shares to the wide receivers is how it's going to go for the Jags.
Yeah. To your point about Ridley, and that's fantastic information. I mean, Ridley in in 2020, we can easily forget he was the wide receiver number 4 in fantasy points per game. And he, like you said, he caught 9 touchdowns, had over 2,000 air yards. And he's 28 going on 29, as I mentioned. So I think that's, and that mentioning that article is really good too. Like, I didn't even think of, I'm right there with Matt. I was not thinking about it in that perspective. So that was a fantastic perspective to add to that. And we have the Harry Snowman in the chat. Shout out to him as well. And Matt's dad is in the chat, and Jamie is in the chat.
Rising tide lifts all boats. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate you chiming in and making sure we are correct on that saying. Yeah,
so the chat's killing it tonight. Really appreciate it. I don't know what's going on here. I brought this one up.
They were
earlier.
Referring to Hendon Hooker.
Hendon Hooker. Okay. There it is. Okay. Hooker is looking good. And he's and even clarified his statement, even said, I'm not just saying that because his name is Hooker. All right. So
Fair,
anyway,
fair.
so anywho, we do want to now shift, and this is probably Bradley's. This is Bradley's. What do you want to call it? His sweet spot. This is where he really excels, and this is best ball, seasonal best ball formats, tournaments, however you want to spin this. I'm guessing you're into a lot of underdog tournaments, so we're gonna play a little this or that. And why don't we just start, because the first one is perfect, because we didn't even plan this, but we'll stick with Calvin Ridley. And would you prefer Calvin Ridley or Amari Cooper?
Yeah, give me Calvin Ridley. Give me Calvin Ridley over Amari Cooper, but it's close. I mean, it's nothing against Amari Cooper. I just like Calvin a little bit more.
Yeah, so taking all like this new argument into account, so if you're a true Bayesian like I am, that you got to immediately change your entire process. As soon as you find out some of this new information. If Calvin Ridley's getting 120 targets, absolutely over Amari Cooper. Honestly, if Calvin Ridley hits anything really over 110, I was thinking he would probably struggle a little bit more than I thought he would to get to 110. But Amari Cooper is another year older, and this Cleveland offense, are we sure that there's going to be some sort of pat jump in passing volume? I don't think so. And they were in very similar tiers for me already. So I think if I'm hedging my bets and thinking that Calvin Ridley is going to get a little bit more opportunity than I've been kind of going about my drafts with, then I would lean towards Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, I think both these players are. The reason we brought them up is because they're going around similar ADPs, and I think both of these offenses you're going to want some exposure to, especially in the AFC North with Cleveland. I think
have a lot of Cleveland. I have a lot of Cleveland.
Cleveland's a hot offense, man. With Deshaun Watson, I think he could take. I mean, I think you're getting a discounted version of him because of his season last year, but he only, he started in week 11. That was it. He got the back third of the season, and when you haven't played that long, it doesn't matter. I mean, just to shake the rust off, you can make that argument for sure. So I lean Amari Cooper, but having heard this new information too, I think I want some exposure to both, just because I think both of these offenses are going to they're ascending, if not going to be in the elite category this year. So, and they're going to be playing in divisions, especially the AFC North. I think it could be a shootout division too, with Baltimore and Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. And I mean, so yeah. Who's next on the list, Matt?
So next we have two running backs going right next to each other. One's got some looming competition maybe, and some veterans. So we have Derrick Henry and Rhamondre Stevenson. Oh, we'll kick it off to Bradley first.
Okay.
Sorry.
I think this is easily Derrick Henry. And it's not particularly close. And this is aside from the possible competition. Last year, Derrick Henry led all running backs in rate of top 5 weeks. 31.4% of his weeks, he was a top 5 running back in half PPR. And I know that we love Rhamondre Stevenson, but he was barely able to eclipse 60% snap shares in most of his games. Look, we're now hearing the rumblings that could drop his ADP down to the 4th, down to the 5th round. And that's not what you want to be targeting in best ball tournaments. Like, the closing line value could be severely disrupted for Rhamondre Stevenson. It will not be disrupted for Derrick Henry, aside from a preseason injury. Henry is going to be one of those players that Tennessee leans pretty heavily on by signing DeAndre Hopkins. It's clear that they don't feel like they're rebuilding. That may push the Will Levis, unless like Ryan Tannehill completely bombs. But even still, they're going to be a conservative offense running through Derrick Henry. And Henry showed no real signs of slowing down, and no reason for Tennessee to move away from him being the centerpiece of the offense. And so with elite, consistent upside, you can't move away from Derrick Henry. I think he's a great value at the back end of the second round.
I was going to ask you about this, Bradley, and I think now's a good opportunity. It's some of the best ways, or my favorite ways to build a team in like the first, second, third round is if you're in the top 5, getting one of those elite receivers. And then I think Derrick Henry is the perfect running back to take in that round 2, and so the way I see it, and I was talking to Aaron Stewart about this just in a meeting the other day, is in another year, in another time, in another galaxy, Derrick Henry would be a first round pick, right? I mean, or pick your running back that's going in the second round right now. Saquon, or I know he's got the contract thing, so that might not be a good example.
And that might move up Derrick Henry. Like his closing line value could be even higher. That's the argument too for Henry, is that you mentioned Saquon, Josh Jacobs could also be having issues. A player that, so yeah, you mentioned it. I'm in agreement here. Derrick Henry could be the guy. Keep going, Seth. Sorry.
No, like because I just wanted to get because I'm building a lot of my best ball teams that way. Because I can't, those receivers there that are left over. Sure, maybe you get a Chris Olave, but I'm not as enthusiastic about T. Higgins or Devonta Smith as I am enthusiastic about a Derrick Henry or a Saquon. You know what I mean? I feel like the difference there, I almost view it like you're getting a first round wide receiver and a first round running back, as opposed to drafting a first round wide receiver and a second round wide receiver. That's kind of how I view it. I don't know. What do you think about that? Is that kind of what you're trying to do? I'm sure you're trying to do all kinds of different things, but if you had to do a combination like that, is that something that you prefer?
I mean, Derrick Henry was going at the 2-3 turn at one point, so you could have started Jefferson, Henry, and then Pollard was going at the 2-3 turn too. You could have gone Jefferson, Pollard, Henry, and then just hammered wide receiver in rounds 4 through 6, and then you're all set. Maybe you grab an elite quarterback somewhere in there. Maybe a Kyle Pitts falls to you, and you're all squared away. Or maybe you punt tight end near the end. Like, that's fine. There's a lot of different ways you can build those. But choosing one of the second round running backs can be a key, whether it's Chubb, whether it's Pollard, whether it's Derrick Henry. I think that those are players we can be considering in round 2, especially given that there are some suspect wide receivers. You mentioned Smith and Higgins and Olave, and there are some suspect wide receivers that are getting bumped up because of those running backs you mentioned earlier, the Saquons and the Josh Jacobs of the world, who are holding out right now.
Yeah, it's really tough for me to draft Higgins over Derrick Henry or a Saquon. That's just my particular brand of tea, though, in these best ball streets. So it's something that I'm more of a dynasty player than a best ball player, still learning more and more about best ball tournaments and Bradley's show for sure, Stack Hunters, if you're not watching it. But to answer the actual question that we posed, it's Derrick Henry for me, and for all the reasons that we talked about, with the looming idea that potentially, I think it was minus 400 the other day, that Dalvin Cook would sign with New England. So
now it's Leonard Fournette and Darrell Henderson.
I don't know what's going on there, but Bill Belichick just loves collecting these running backs. I remember the year where we were excited about Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris. I think we're the two guys that we were excited about, and then lo and behold, New England takes both of them and crushes our dreams of those players being dynasty relevant. So, Matt Babich, what do you think? Derrick Henry or Stevenson?
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I'm Derrick Henry. I'm team Derrick Henry.
Good dog.
To what Bradley mentioned, and then what I was talking about on Mock Draft Live with Tyler, it's so funny how quickly we forget of the Tennessee Titans being the number 1 seed in the AFC just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The last time that Ryan Tannehill had an alpha receiver to throw to. Am I remembering my years correctly? AJ Brown was on that team.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure. I had a mini question moment in my head. I was like, am I thinking of this correctly? But yeah. So they had no one to throw to last year. They were a disaster of a team. Tannehill gets hurt. And now they say, all right, let's fix our mistakes. They got a new front office member. They recognize that was a horrible decision, trading AJ Brown. And they went out and they got DeAndre Hopkins. to try and fill that void. And so Derrick Henry, this Titans offense is not going to be as bad as people think. The Tennessee Titans season win total of 7.5. I'm hitting the over on that. In the AFC South, it's pretty easy to draw up 8 wins for them over the course of the season. So yeah, I'm Derrick Henry all the way. Seth, I'm going to flip it right back to you. Anthony Richardson or Dak Prescott?
Wow. Anthony Richardson could be one of these quarterbacks that just rushes for 1,000 yards, just like Fields did. I mean, he has that upside. And then, of course, Gardner Minshew could start some games too. That's kind of the range of outcomes. But if I had to guess, I would say he's starting week 1. He was really impressive. Not that it matters much, but when we were asking him, Jason Alwine and I were in that press conference room at the NFL draft, and he was very impressive in that interview. And I think this is the college passing stats are a thing that is going to be very easy to point to and say, yeah, this kid, he's going to have some developing to do. And that's true. But this is an athlete like we've never seen in the NFL. So I'm willing to press the button on Anthony Richardson, but I do like Dak where he's going too. So this is kind of a cop-out answer, but I think you're going to want to have some exposure. I'm really interested to hear what Bradley has to say about this to Anthony Richardson, because if he blows up, I mean, that's a tremendous value in the 9th round, 8th, 9th round, maybe even later in some drafts. I've seen him go later. So Bradley, what do you think? Anthony Richardson or Dak?
Oh, the bull case for Anthony Richardson is so juicy. It is so tantalizing.
Yes,
it is Cam Newton rookie season where we see, Cam Newton just absolutely crushing and destroying. But let's not get carried away here. I mean, Josh Allen really mightily struggled, and only started near the second half of the season his rookie year, and that's his player profiler comp. Anthony Richardson's is Josh Allen. I think you have a lot of NFL readiness that needs to happen for Anthony Richardson. His completion percentage is going to be low. His pass volume is going to be low. You're going to be dependent upon a lot of rushing. And Shane Steichen is the new head coach, and he was the offensive coordinator last year for Jalen Hurts. So there is a pathway for Anthony Richardson to pay off. But there's a really bare case for Anthony Richardson as well, like feast or famine. But I would very confidently take Dak Prescott over Anthony Richardson. Over the last 3 years, there is only one quarterback who has a higher rate of top 5 weeks than Dak Prescott. Only one. Patrick Mahomes. That's it.
Wow.
No one else. Kyler Murray, not there. Jalen Hurts, not there. Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Deshaun Watson, no. None of them. Only Patrick Mahomes. And now you add Brandon Cooks, and Michael Gallup is now healthier. He was rushed out. Michael Gallup is due for a bounce back year. He was rushed out there from the ACL. They've got better weapons this year. Tony Pollard is going to handle more touches. Zeke was a waste of some of those touches in the backfield. There is a pathway for Dak Prescott to not only be paying off quarterback 12, his ADP right now, but to be a top 5 quarterback, even top 3. I think there is a ceiling play for Dak Prescott to access top 3 for best ball. So I'm really bullish on Dallas this year. I think that Dak Prescott has the history of doing it. He's a sure thing, and he's undervalued at quarterback 12.
I'm not as bullish on Dak Prescott. As a talent, I am very bullish on Dak Prescott. I've been vocal about this. I am not bullish on the Cowboys executives and the Cowboys coaches. And I know that Pollard is not going to be a guy that you want to give 300 carries to, and they're not going to be a full-blown rush first offense, even though that's what they've been vocal about. But I don't know if they're going to be this highly efficient offense. I think they're going to be upper middle tier in terms of drive length, getting to the other opponent's red zone. And I think they're going to be settling for a lot of field goals. I think they're going to be one of those offenses that just like the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. They can get to the red zone, but the inefficient play calling, they're taking really long drives. They're taking off the clock, but they're only getting to the 40 to the 20-yard line before they get stalled. I just don't know if I believe in the play calling. I believe in the talent. I believe in Gallup, but I think it's shallow after that in terms of pass catchers. I don't believe in Brandon Cooks at 30 years old being a significant asset to the passing game. To me, he kind of just replaces what T.Y. Hilton gave that offense towards the end of the year. And it's more of a testament to their depth at receiver. I hate that they lost Dalton Schultz. I loved what he gave that offense, especially in the red zone. And so I think he's priced fairly efficiently. I could start buying Dak as high up as QB10, given best ball formats and what you can do with your rosters. And with Anthony Richardson, the ceiling is tantalizing. But like Bradley mentioned, the history of rookie quarterbacks who have this profile, Justin Fields is an example that a lot of people want to go to because he's game breaking. It's exciting. It just happened. But when we look at the two prospects as a passer, blind resume test, you'd put your finger down on Fields as the better passer every single time without, just looking at a couple of metrics, you'd be able to tell. So Fields was a guy who was closer to Lawrence in his college metrics than he was any other quarterback in his class. So that's, although it's a tantalizing example, I think Fields is a different type of quarterback. He had a very adept knowledge of the game. He was very pro ready, despite, having to be thrusted in the Matt Nagy situation. And the more realistic case for Anthony Richardson is that he finishes more towards, QB 15 to 18. And he's going to have those spike weeks and they're going to be juicy. But if the Colts don't end up being a good team, how much are they pushing him to push the offense, and how many scoring opportunities are they going to have? So in these situations, you just got to lean towards which is going to be the higher volume offense, and that's going to be Dallas.
Yeah, you had to do it, Matt. You made it a Bears show, which I didn't have to do. And then you brought up Matt Nagy. And then it was like, how could you do this? Well, I thought with the bad man is gone now. He's in Kansas City. So and Justin Fields his rookie season was weird with Andy Dalton. I don't know if we're gonna get that with Anthony Richardson, but there's a world where Minshew also starts some games too. It could happen. I'm not saying it will or not, but
Minshew mania, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. Jamie has a question: Dak or Russ at their current ADP?
Well, Dak is, as I said, he's going as quarterback 12 right now, and Russ is going. So Dak is pick 106 on Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code Underworld for 100% deposit match, first time deposit match up to $100. Russ is going at pick 134, quarterback 18. I've been drafting a lot of both of them, and sometimes I've picked both as my two quarterbacks. Like, especially if I pushed quarterback, I've said I want Dallas and I want Denver, and I'm okay with that because Denver, the game environments, we love the shootout potentials with Kansas City, with the LA Chargers, and the Vegas Raiders are going to be bad this year. So I think that there's a pathways for some explosive games for Russ under Sean Payton, but I'm also a fan of Dak and Dallas. So why not both? Why not give me the meme? Why not both?
Yeah, that whole stretch of quarterbacks from Dak to Russell Wilson, I've been enjoying pairing up with each other and just going for, the positional scarcity at wide receiver and bolstering up at running back a little bit earlier, and then grabbing two of those quarterbacks that I feel like are a little undervalued at their ADP and have something closer to QB10 in their range of outcomes. So yeah, why not both?
Yeah, don't you get the feeling too that Russell Wilson is just going to have a bounce back year now that Nathaniel Hackett's not around anymore, and you have a grown up Sean Payton, been there, done that, and then they draft another weapon for him in Marvin Mims, and so
competent play calling can do so much. Daniel Jones looked like one of the bigger busts in recent draft history. And then somebody with actual knowledge of player and human development and football knowledge comes in and just completely turns it around. So, yeah, I think it's tough not to expect a bounce back year. Speaking of I don't know, that's not really a good transition, but we're gonna get one more of these in just to shove it in Seth's face real quick before we leave.
Uh-oh.
So recently added to the show sheet, Bradley, is Christian Watson or Drake London? Hopefully you're Watson right now, so this is your time for your manifesto. But if not, I chose the wrong two to pair up.
This is Christian Watson, and it's not particularly close. Yeah. We liked some of the metrics that London put up, but he put those up while Kyle Pitts was out of the lineup. And we liked him as a prospect. I like the profile. The Atlanta Falcons offense is not the volume that you want, and I'd rather take the player who from week 10 onward was the wide receiver 2 overall in yards per route run. And he's going 50th in ADP on the FFPC. Our partners here use promo code Underworld for $25 off your first team. But really, Christian Watson is an explosive athlete, early second round draft capital. He is a target earner, median 23% target share last year. Who else is going to catch passes? I mean, Romeo Doubs was one of the worst wide receivers in the NFL last year in terms of PFF receiving grade, in terms of yards per route run. He was among the worst. And it's clearly Watson. Jaden Reed might be a nice piece near the end of the season, but Watson is a target earner, downfield threat. He can make people miss. He's got the athleticism, the boom spike weeks. He's got the profile that fits. And if you want to argue about Christian Watson, like, just compare all of his metrics to anyone else in the top 10 of fantasy points per game. The reason why he didn't perform well at the beginning of the season was because he was dealing with injuries. And once he was healthy, he showed that he was a dominant force to be reckoned with. And all Jordan Love needs to be is a 30th percentile starting NFL quarterback. He doesn't need to be even average. Just get the ball to Christian Watson and he will crush. So I am very confident in Christian Watson, another my guy for this year.
So I assume that means that you're pretty confident, and maybe not as confident in Love, but you're confident in the Green Bay offense to, manufacture some touchdowns for Christian Watson then.
They'll manufacture touches for Christian Watson.
Okay.
But he'll turn many of those into touchdowns, because that's what elite athletes with elite speed and agility and juke rates and all of that can do once they have the ball in their hands. And the Packers, I mean, they drafted 2 tight ends in the second and third rounds, right? That it's going to be small ball until the ball gets into Christian Watson's hands.
Gotcha. I don't know. I'm skeptical about Jordan Love. I think if and you're more plugged into the Packers than I am, probably, I would assume. But I'm worried that the offense is going to be a little bit more leaning on AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones too. That's probably what I would do if I had a quarterback like Jordan Love. But the division is juicy. I love the NFC North this year, for all the reasons that we talked about. I think some of the defenses, especially the Bears, the Lions, and the Vikings. The Bears, as I mentioned, really didn't do much to add to their pass rush. The Vikings, if you look at what they did, they didn't really do much to add to a defense that was really hurting last year. So I'm going to go with Drake London. It's pretty. If you watch this show, you know that I'm not the biggest Christian Watson fan, and I understand the appeal. I understand the profile. But I know he was the wide receiver 8 from week 10 on, or something like something
9. Crazy
like that. 9. Okay. I was going off the top of my head there, but really it was 4 games. He doesn't have Aaron Rodgers anymore. I know that this isn't the best example to use, because I have my doubts about Atlanta's offense too. And I have my doubts about Desmond Ridder, but if you're making me put quarterbacks in categories, Jordan Love is getting drafted really high, and Desmond Ridder's basically free. And I don't know if I see much difference between those 2 players. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. I don't really love either one of these players where they're being drafted. I think both of them are going around, like Bradley said, pick 50 in FFPC. I think they're going in the 4th round in Underdog. I think they're going around the same spot is like a DJ Moore, and so I'm not getting a ton of them. I'm picking DJ Moore there every time. That's just not my particular brand of tea, so I'll push back a little bit there, Bradley. Matt, I know you're going Christian Watson too, so lay it on me.
Baffles me is that not many people are questioning the talent of Christian Watson, and the heart of the argument, as Seth mentioned, has to do with not liking Jordan Love. But my argument for weeks and months now, which is what Bradley coined at the very end, is all Jordan Love needs to be is a 30th percentile, quarterback, and he's going to be fine. And so the two numbers that strike me when I look at his advanced stats and metric page on Player Profiler, target quality rating was 90th among qualified wide receivers, and his catchable target rate was 94th among qualified receivers, with Aaron Rodgers at the quarterback position. So it feels like the bottom of the barrel in terms of the quality of targets that were coming Christian Watson's way. And so if all Jordan Love has to do is replicate that inaccurate downfield targets.
So
I heard Rodgers was throwing with a broken thumb.
Yeah,
so full disclosure.
I don't want this. Seth is chomping at the bit. I don't want this to turn into. I don't want the clickbaiters turning this into Jordan Love is better than Aaron Rodgers. No, Aaron Rodgers was.
Let's put that on a Twitter post.
I heard what I heard in that statement there that you just made is Mike White is better than Aaron Rodgers. But anyway.
That was a direct quote. That was a direct. I want you to know, Bradley, that was a direct quote from Seth. He said he didn't see much of a difference between Joe Flacco and Mike White than Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, he's 40. He's going to be 40. I don't know, man. There was some pretty rough. If he had the broken thumb, I didn't know about the broken thumb.
But. Oh yeah, he dealt with the broken thumb from like week 8 onward, and like, I mean, it was clear that he was not passing in the right way. The grip was not there. I mean, he threw 2 interceptions against the Detroit Lions, and I was like, well, that's uncharacteristic. Why is he off? And like, then they talked about, oh, he has some issue with his thumb. And I'm like, oh, it's definitely broken, and he can't grip the ball at all. And that's why he can't get any zip or touch on it. And despite all of the bad throws and the relatively bad performance, Rodgers was still top 12 in almost every single like PFF passing grade and quarterback rating grade. And he was still decent. It was just a step down from what we had seen from the last 2 seasons of MVP caliber passing. So I think this is a bounce back year for Rodgers too, as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah, it speaks more to how much the thumb injury was hindering Aaron Rodgers' performance, in my opinion. It's when he's running those deep downfield targets and Rodgers is having to step up in the pocket and avoid pressure. It's going to be difficult with a broken thumb to fire that ball accurately downfield. So, didn't want that to turn into Aaron Rodgers versus Jordan Love. More of Jordan Love just doesn't have to be. Yeah. Seeing the price, I don't care is the thing. Like, I know I'm going to end up on social media. I know I'm going to end up on social media with Jordan Love is better than Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. And I don't care.
It's happening. Oh, it's going to happen.
I defended Zachary Charbonnet on Twitter simply because I looked at my phone and saw a quote got massaged that made it look like I was super in on Zach Charbonnet. I will go with the flow. I'll defend anything to the death.
Yeah. And I also heard that Bradley say that the Jets are probably going to finish first in the AFC East because Rodgers is playing with a broken thumb, and they've got a great defense, right? So they've got to. I mean, yeah. What do you think?
Look, it's going to be a tough division. It's going to be a tough division, but look, I think one of the pivot points is going to be how healthy Breece Hall is. Because that is a game-changing player. And we talk about like running backs who hold out. Like Breece Hall should hold out at the end of this season, at the end of 2023, just like Zeke. And that's how they're going to have to reset the market. It's not going to be these running backs who are at the end of their rookie deals. Like the Saquon Barkleys and Josh Jacobs need to be talking to the Breece Halls of the world and say like, look, like this is what your future can be. You don't want this. You need to be the one holding out because you saw Zeke get the bag. So
Yeah. Wow. It's a great
sorry.
point. It's a great
Anyways,
point.
sorry we kind of took
Like
That happens every
I always invite this. This is basically my fault. So it's you can blame it on me. So I just to put a bow on that, I don't between those two, Drake London and Christian Watson, I think I'm probably going to have some of both. I believe it or not, I have been drafting Christian Watson because there is a world where Seth's wrong. Not a ton. Not a ton. Okay, don't overreact. That's going. We all know
capitulation.
That's going on social media.
Capitulation.
That's going on
live
social
on the
media.
stream.
Seth has drafted 50% Christian Watson and underdog. It's going on social media. Yeah. So when the point is here, kids, when somebody like Bradley tells me that he disagrees with me, I respect Bradley's opinion. So I would be a fool not to take what Bradley says, apply it to my own analysis, and go, maybe I'm missing something here. There you go.
Seth, this is so important. Like what we're doing here in this roundtable, discussing players, refining our processes, bringing up new stats, new perspectives is so important to the process. And if you don't mind, I'll take an aside for just a second. Billy Muzio and I got our content start together a few years ago. And our first argument was over Max Williams versus Dan Arnold as the starting tight end. Who will be the best tight end for the Arizona Cardinals? But from that point and just arguing about players and perspectives just continued to make us better fantasy players and better rankers. Like Billy, over the course of 2 years, he and I were going back and forth about rankings, and coming out of the Fantasy Football Fanalist podcast, like he was the number one draft ranker out of over 250 rankers on Fantasy Pros, because like we go back and forth and like I've had success. I've had a couple top 10 weeks on the rankings, but it's all part of this discussion, this process of we make our player takes better and we make our gameplay better. And all of this is so important. So I'm really grateful to you, Seth and Matt, for inviting me on tonight. This has been really great, digging into each other's takes and learning more, because it's all about just making each other better in this space.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you having you on, and yeah, that was a great aside, and that's what this is all about. You know, we're here to help promote the amazing talent that's within the player profiler community, and we're here to refine our own processes and help, you know, those in the chat and those watching after the show, you know, streams to refine their processes as well. So as we get to close out, why don't you tell the people where they can find you, any of your recent work that you want to plug as we get out of here, and then maybe a bold prediction for the season if you got one.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. I post a lot on there. My Threads account got suspended, so whatever.
Already?
Already.
Wow.
They thought I was an imposter, I guess. And I don't know. Whatever. So don't follow me on Threads. It doesn't until I get that account back up. Whatever. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. I posted some Latavius Murray thing you can eat your hearts out at earlier tonight. But every Tuesday, 8 to 9 p.m. Stack Hunters during the summer. And then during the season, there's going to be some great content that I'll be bringing on the Player Profiler Network as well. I've got some articles that I've been working on. One of them is going to be coming out, I think, next week, Seth, right on best ball points added. So there's some really great content from the best ball perspective and the best ball streets that I've been putting out. I mean, earlier today, I was recording Man versus Machine with Dario and Theo. And so that's been some content as well that I've been putting out here for Player Profiler. So I've been very grateful for the opportunity to jump here in the Dynasty Roundtable as well. So Matt and Seth, thanks again for having me on.
Of course, man. And that article, since I am the editor around here, is coming out July 22nd. That's what the schedule says right now. So I'm looking at it. I had to pull that up because we do have Bradley on the show. And if you have not checked out Bradley's work, you can check it out on the Player Profiler website under the news and article section. That's where we have all of our articles You could go back as far back as you wanted to go. They're all there, and it's all free. So you got to go check that out. I plug that every time. The origin of this show, Bradley, is actually called the Writers Roundtable, because we wanted to bring writers like, I don't know, this guy right at the bottom of the screen here, Matt Babich, on to talk about things. And then we discovered, oh my God, these writers we have are actually really smart people. Maybe we should, make them more involved around Player Profiler. And so a lot of them have picked up other responsibilities and are getting more involved in the space. And it's just furthering this conversation like you talked about fantasy football, which we all love. And so together our process is getting better and better. And I know my process, because of my co-host here, Matt Babich, has gotten better and better and better. As Billy Muzio says, iron sharpens iron. So without,
I think I gave him that phrase for what it's worth.
Okay.
But I have a bold prediction, and then I can't leave a podcast without one endorsement. Bold prediction is Justin Herbert MVP 2023.
Ooh, I love that.
Bold prediction. And then my endorsement, Dwayne McBride, no matter what, baby. Dwayne McBride, no matter what. Alexander Madison is just a guy. Go get yourself some Dwayne McBride.
That's a Draft Day reference, right?
Yes.
From that movie. Yeah, I love that movie. I don't care what people say. Matt Babich, what you got to plug, man?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Babich_Matt10. For those listening audio only, that's BABICH_Matt10. You can find me on Twitter there. You can find all of my articles on the news and articles section that Seth just mentioned. Right now we're doing a Win Your League with the Player Profiler staff series, and that's myself, Seth, Jack Kavanaugh, Theo Greminger, Maddie Kiwoom, and Jason Allwine, bringing you a variety of topics. We've been doing breakout positions. The quarterbacks article was just posted, so you can read why Seth is talking about Brock Purdy being the best kept secret that isn't really a secret. And you can find out why I'm taking Kenny Pickett this year as my breakout quarterback. And so we're going to be continuing all season long with some hard-hitting analysis there. And, as the season starts coming and approaching, we get to training camp and Hard Knocks and all this stuff. This is when I try to start ramping up my writing again. So in the near future, you're going to start seeing some more articles from me. So be watching out for that. And then it's going to be in a little bit now, but first weekend of August, mark your calendars. I will be on the Game Plan with Maddie Kiwoom. So very excited. Every time I chop it up with Maddie, that's just an incredible time. So excited to venture into that show. And then, as always, you can find me here every Wednesday.
Yeah. Shout out to the chat. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you to Bradley one more time. Go follow him wherever he goes. Well, not everywhere he goes, but go follow him on social media. That's a joke I always say that never gets old. And until next time, sorry, Bradley, for this. Nobody cares about Aaron Rodgers. We'll see you later. Oh, hold on. No, it's not over yet. I got to hit the thing.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.